Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to our weekly Spark every Thursday. We have tried to do a variety of different programming according to different tastes, different things that people are interested in. And so far, thank God, it's been really wonderful. We've been having such special feedback. And I look forward, and Sarah and I look forward to being able to continue providing interesting programming for future. And additionally, what's so exciting is that lately we've been able to start incorporating in-person programming as well. And we've started with our bike rides, and then we recently had a connection and conversation where we went outside and we sat around and we had a beautiful conversation, which Sarah led, that brought back all those feelings of what it feels like to be really connected with people, not just through the computer. But we also understand that everyone has different comfort levels, and therefore we're still going to be doing a lot of online programming as well. And we're sort of going to have a hybrid between online programming and in-person programming to make sure everyone's needs are met and we get to every person across the board. But I strongly encourage you to look up all the activities and programming and children's programming and teens programming that we're going to be having in the future. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce a wonderful person. Such a treat that she agreed to come on today. So just a little bit of background. Firstly, we're entering a very exciting month, the month of Nisan, which is where the holiday of Passover is in, where we are redeemed as a nation. It's all about freedom, talking about freedom, how we get to freedom. It's a very exciting, liberating time of the year. So that's super exciting. And I thought it would be such an honor to have my friend come on, my friend Rena Wittlin, who I've known for quite some time now. And I've been so lucky to know her because she lives in Orlando, but she's originally from South Florida. And she grew up in a home of educators. Her parents are a rabbi and rebbitzin of a very large synagogue in Hollywood, Florida. And it was in her bloodstream. Torah has been in her bloodstream from a little girl, and she's taken all that she got as a young girl, and she's brought it up with her into adulthood, and she's had many years teaching experience, all ages, from young children to high school and even women. And I'm so proud to call her my friend. And even though she's my friend, I learned so much from her, and she has so much wisdom and insight into the teachings of the Torah. So Rena is going to share with us today some thoughts about this very special month. And without further ado, I'd like to give it over to Rena. Welcome, Rena.
Thank you. With an introduction like that, I'll speak anytime. Wow. Thank you, Shifra and Sarah, for inviting me to be here, and to all the incredible Spark ladies for having me. Okay, Purim has passed. It's long gone. It's a week over. Been there, done that. I say that very definitively, but I'm definitely coming back to the Purim story. It's a great story. Anyways, Purim has passed, and that paves the way for the new month that's coming in. That's coming in a week from Sunday. Purim is in the month of Adar. And then right now, today is the 20th of Adar. And come a week from Sunday, we're going to enter into the new month of Nisan. So with Nisan comes the story of Passover. The story of Passover, the basic story goes that the Jewish people were slaves in the land of Egypt. Moses comes to save them, to redeem them. God brings the plagues onto the lands of Egypt, onto Pharaoh and the Egyptians. Pharaoh lets the Jewish people finally leave Egypt. They come to the Reed Sea. Sorry, I call it the Reed Sea. I know most people call it the Red Sea, but the actual translation from Hebrew, the Yam Suf is what it's called in Hebrew, and the literal translation is Reed Sea. So there are historians and myself included, who believe that it was actually a typo somewhere, and that's how it got called the Red Sea. So I like to call it the Reed Sea. And the Reed Sea, God splits the Reed Sea. The Jewish people cross through on dry land. They get to the other side. Meanwhile, the Egyptians come chasing them through the dry land. And as the last Jewish person steps up onto the dry land on the other side, God crashes down the water onto the Egyptians, destroying the Jewish people's enemy. The Jews are now free to serve God as they please. Wow. It's an incredible story. And we retell this story every year at the Passover Seder. And it's mentioned countless times in our prayer liturgy. It's mentioned daily, it's mentioned weekly, it's mentioned many times because it's so fundamental to our faith, which is really a whole class unto itself. But nevertheless, this time of year is the redemption month. Now, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, who was a contemporary influential Jewish scholar, thinker, and author who lived in the 1900s, primarily in England, he explains that the Jewish calendar does not work in a linear manner. It's not a line where we started over here and we just keep traveling through time. Rather, it's cyclical. It's like a coil that goes around and around and around. The Exodus, which occurred in the Jewish year 2448, 2448, the Jewish year, which was a whopping 3,000 years ago, since we're now in the Jewish year 5781. And so the year 2448, the month of Nisan, in the year 2448 is not just a micro dot in our long timeline of history. Rather, we create this cyclical coil of the calendar, and every single year when we get back to the month of Nisan, we are reliving and reapproaching that time period again. We tap into the 5,780 Nisan months from the years past. Every year, we relive it again. We re-enter, we re-feel the characteristics, the emotions, the energy of the past years. Judaism is a religion of growth. We don't look at our past and say, to heck with that, that's our past, I don't care about it, I am who I am now. That's not how we view our lives and history as a whole. I am a new person today, but my past is a part of me. My past is a part of me as I forge my way through the future each and every day. That being said, this changes the Passover story to no longer be just a story and no longer be just something for the history books or a good night story. Might be a little scary for a good night story, but just a story, it's not. It becomes part and parcel of us. So then we need more. We need more information. We need to understand some more details about the story. We need more to then fully realize where we are in the calendar year. There are so many events that take place during Passover. By the way, this will be my first reference back to the Purim story. In the Purim story, the fast of Esther and the hanging of Haman both happen on Passover, which is something that not many people know since we're celebrating it a month earlier. But the truth is, in the story, that the decree, the Esther coming to the king of Persia, to Ahasuerus. Sorry, I can't say his name is in English. It has too many vowels in it. Esther coming to the king of Persia and the hanging of Haman, it's all on the holiday of Passover. But then 11 months later was when the Jewish people defended themselves against their enemies and they won. And that's when the actual holiday of Purim occurs. And we remember everything that happened 11 months prior on Passover. But the actual redemption of the Purim story, certainly the beginning of the redemption, happens on Passover. And there are many other stories. There's actually, at the end of the Passover Seder, at the end of the Haggadah, there's a song. There are a few songs at the end. Some people say them, some people don't. They're not integral to the Passover Seder at all. But if you do sing them, or if you do notice them, some of them really just go through different miracles that have happened on Passover, different redemption kind of miracles that have happened throughout our history on Passover. And there are times where I've been teaching in high school, and I taught in New York, and I'd be teaching from the prophets, and I would tell them, okay, this story, if you look really closely in the Haggadah at the end, you'll find the story, you'll find a reference, and you'll think to yourself, Mrs. Wittlin taught that to us, and then you'll know. Okay. So there are many things that happen in our history on Passover. And it's brought down that if someone's going to have a court case, they should do it in the month of Nisan, because traditionally it's a time of redemption. So, okay, let's take a step back for a second. Nisan in the Torah is referred to with 3 different names. And we're going to go through each one of those names and the meaning that it gives to the month. So the first time that we have the month of Nisan mentioned in the Torah, it's called Rosh Chadashim, which means the beginning, the first of the months. Even though our new year is all the way back in September time. It's in the Hebrew month of Tishrei. It's a few months prior. It's like 6 months ago. And the Torah begins counting the months from Nisan, though. Why? Well, in Tishrei, the world was created. But in Nisan, with the emergence of the Jewish people as a nation, with the goal of recognizing God in this world and in our own lives, that's really the main point. More than the creation, it imbues the world with a purpose. The second one is Aviv. Aviv means spring. The springtime is a physical time when the natural world around us is in a stage of rebirth and blossoming. When I was a kid, growing up here in Florida, in South Florida, even worse for what I'm gonna say, I'm being really honest. I thought that seasons were, history, olden days. It was like an olden day thing. Seasons were like an olden day thing. We didn't really have them anymore. I mean, look outside. Sometimes it was hot, sometimes it was hotter. Every once in a while, we had a nice cool day. Leaves, the animals going to sleep and coming out. I don't know. I didn't see any of that. And I really honestly thought for most of my childhood that seasons were like an olden day thing. Like in the history books, you learn about stuff in history, and the seasons was just part of that. And then I grew up. I went to other places. I went to New York. I spent 2 years in Israel. I lived in New York for 5.5 years after I was married. And I have to say, every year it was an incredible experience to experience the seasons as a whole, because it wasn't something that I grew up with. It wasn't something I took for granted, especially because I was teaching 2nd grade at the time. And in the 2nd grade curriculum, you do the seasons. And I would teach about the seasons and what happens in each season. And I would just be amazed and try to tell my students, like, look, it's really happening. They must have thought I was out of my mind. Like, duh, this happens every year. Like, what do you care? But it really was so incredible to me how the seasons really were there, and they were very powerful, especially the spring. Because when fall would come, and as beautiful as those leaves were, I really felt like they were beautiful to distract you from what was coming. Because what was coming was a brutal winter. And to a Florida girl like myself, it was brutal. It was really hard. And when I saw those first blossoms, the excitement, the winter is going to end, the rebirth, oh my goodness, it was so exciting for me. I knew that the weather was going to change. I knew there was going to be grass again. There was going to be leaves on the trees. There was going to be color in the world. I was so excited every single time. The rebirth, the blossoming, that redemption, that newness of the springtime. That's the Aviv in the Torah. The third name that the Torah uses for the month of Nisan is Nisan. Nisan is actually an Aramaic word, and it's related to the Hebrew word nitzan, which is a bud. In the Song of Songs, the epic poem of the love that binds us to Hashem, which was written by King Solomon, he refers to redemption as the time when buds are seen throughout the land. The rebirth of a nation that's ready to flower. It's an incredible time. Okay, so this really is the time of redemption. We see it in the names of the months through the Torah. Now let's go a little deeper. What is exile, right? From exile to Exodus. We start off the story in exile, we end it in Exodus. So what is exile? What is redemption? Exile is estrangement. It's much more than a physical expulsion. It's being estranged from someone, something, even from just ourselves. We were in Egypt. The Hebrew for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which comes from the word tsar, narrow, restrictive. We were in a hard-pressed place. The times where you feel that squeeze, that weight weighing upon yourself, to then move out from there. In the end, we leave that behind. We build our identity as a nation that sees and recognizes God in every aspect of our lives. That's part of what the plagues do within the story of allowing us to see the hand of God. And taking that throughout our lives of seeing God in our own lives every day. Okay. During the Seder, 4 is a recurring number in the Seder. We have 4 cups of wine. There are 4 expressions of redemption. There are the 4 sons, the 4 questions. We've got lots of 4. The Maharal, who was a Torah leader in the 1500s in Prague, he writes about the meaning of all the numbers. And one of the things he says about the number 4 is that it represents the physical world. It represents an actual place that you have. 1 is like a one-dimensional, 2, 3, you have a fully dimensional thing, but 4, you have an actual place. We have 4 directions, north, south, east, west. 4 seasons, the fall, winter, summer, spring. We have 4 basic compounds of the world: fire, water, air, and earth. The physical world is what leads us into the spiritual realm in many different ways. When we go through hardships, when we go through the hard times that are part of everyone's life, it creates who we are today. It becomes a part of who we are. Our exiles become part of the Exodus. Like those memes that I kept seeing a few months ago at the beginning, definitely a month or 2 ago, of like 2020, erase 2020 from the books, 2020, we're not interested, whatever it is. That type of stuff, as much as on one hand, yeah, as a teacher, it was pretty hard, I gotta say, but it's a part of me and it has to be a part of me. And I'm going to take it with me for the rest of my life. And each one of us is going to take 2020 and whatever it meant for us and whatever it was for us with us for the rest of our life. We can't shed it. It is a part of who we are. Okay. 2 more points, and then we're going to tie it all together. Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, a contemporary leader in the 1900s in America, gave a very interesting insight into the entire Exodus story. He mentions how going from being a slave to being a free person with the ability to serve God is no simple feat. That's not simple. The mentality, the emotions of going, the mental energy of going from one to the other is huge. It's huge. And they have the 10 months of seeing their captors being punished. The Jewish people go through 10 months of seeing the plagues. The plagues, each one happened, and there was 3 weeks in between. Each one happened for 1 week. There were 3 weeks in between. So we're talking about 10 months of seeing their captors being punished. One main purpose of that was for the Jews themselves to be able to move past the, I don't have to listen to you anymore. I am my own person. Going from that slave mentality to the me, to the individual, to I am a person mentality. And he brings this out in the first national commandment that's given to the Jewish people, is given during the Passover story. The first commandment given to the Jewish people as a nation is not Shabbos. It's not kosher. It's not any of those big things that you might think it would be, but it's a commandment that in all honesty, you've probably never heard of because we don't even do it the way it's supposed to be done today, because it requires having a certain autonomy and our own judges, etc. And therefore we don't even have it today. The first commandment that's given during the plagues, before the last plague, is a commandment that's called in Hebrew Kiddush HaChodesh, which literally means sanctifying the new month. Now, the way it worked way back when was the moon, the Jewish calendar runs according to the moon. So the beginning of each month is when the new moon is visible. The moon gets bigger, 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 smaller, 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 smaller. It disappears. The next month begins when the new month is visible. Now, the way they would know when the new month was visible is people would go out, they would look. 2 people would come to the judges and say, okay, we saw the new moon. And then they would be asked questions. Where did you see it? Where were you when you saw it? Who were you with? What did it look like? Where was it in the sky? And if they passed all the questioning, then the judges would proclaim, okay, the new month of whatever it was has now begun. And then you would know, okay, if tonight is the first of the month, then the holiday of Passover, which is on the 15th, is going to be in 15 days. All of a sudden, you knew when Passover was. Until then, you weren't sure if it was going to be on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. They weren't sure because they didn't actually create the new month yet. Now we have the calendar set, so we don't do this every month, but that's how it was originally done. And that was the commandment, the first commandment given to the Jewish people as a nation. Why that commandment? And Rabbi Soloveitchik gives a beautiful answer. He says that one of the key differences between a slave and a free person is the ability to manage your own time. When you're a slave, you don't have that ability. You don't have the ability to manage your own time. Someone else is managing your time. But when you are a free person, then you decide what you're doing and when. That's a decision that we make all the time. We make that decision of how we choose to spend our time. And it's a special decision. And this, says Rabbi Soloveitchik, it was part of the mental rehabilitation of the Jewish people from being a slave to being a free nation able to serve God. In order to be able to serve God, they had to be free, free in their mind, free of themselves to make the decisions that they want to make, to choose the decisions that they want to do. Okay, one more point and we're going to tie it all together. In the Purim story, I told you I was going back to the Purim story. Okay, in the Purim story, we all know Haman. Haman is the one who makes that evil decree against the Jewish people, and Esther goes to the king and ends up getting Haman hung, right? Ends up getting him killed so that they can try to annul this decree of Haman. Now, an interesting thing within the story is that Haman was the prime minister. He had a position of power, but he was not the ruler. So in order to enact his decree against the Jewish people, which he wanted to do, he had to convince the king that the king wanted to do this too. And he comes to the king, and what he says to him is something I always found so fascinating. He says in the Hebrew, Yesh am echad miforad umifuzar, which means in English, there is a nation that is spread out and scattered amongst the lands. Now I have to say, if I was going to describe the Jewish people, well, people have told me that we're a holy and blessed nation. That's always nice to hear. But going throughout our history to the not so pretty times, we've been told that we're stiff-necked, we're stubborn. Even some time periods, some enemies call us money hungry. But scattered and spread out, that's the reason to kill us? It just seems so strange. I could think of a lot worse things than being scattered and spread out. And what Haman was saying was they're nothing. They aren't even a unified nation. They're all scattered and spread out amongst the land. You don't even have anything to lose by killing them. It's not like they're a unit. It's not like they're gonna gang up against you or anything. They're like a nothing. That's really what they are. But they're bad nothing. And what's fascinating is if you look at the commandments that the rabbis, when they enacted the holiday of Purim, they put 4 commandments that we're obligated to do on the day of Purim. All 4 of them have to do with unity, have to do with the unification of the Jewish people because of what Haman said. The first one is hearing the Megillah, which you're supposed to do with lots of people. Having a big feast, which also you're supposed to do with lots of people, talk about the miracle that happened. We give money to the poor. We don't ignore them. We give with an open hand. There's no, I'm better than you. I don't know what do you want the money for? No, it's a very generous and open holiday. And of course, the 4th one of giving food gifts from one person to another is of course a very unifying commandment, a very unifying thing that we do on Purim. It's a very unifying day. We're one nation. This past Purim, seeing people who I haven't seen in a while, it was amazing. It was great. I felt it. I felt that unity. It was awesome. Okay. It's from the unity of Purim that leads us into the freedom of Passover. When we unify as a nation, we experience a national redemption and rebirth. We bring God right into our lives as we choose our own time. We choose to recognize the hand of God all around us and in every aspect of our lives. There are 4 expressions of redemption in the Passover Haggadah. There's Behotzesi, God has taken us from Egypt. Behitzalti, God has saved us from the oppression of the Egyptians. Bega'alti, God has redeemed us. Belakachti, God has taken us for himself to be his nation. Notice the pattern from to. God has taken us from Egypt, from the oppression, has taken us to be his nation. Redemption is not just about letting something go. It's not about throwing off the yoke, throwing off responsibilities and boundaries. That's not redemption. Redemption is our journey from one thing to another. In this case, our own personal journey to a relationship with God. So just to review, we had 4 main points here. From exile to Exodus, the hard times help create who we are. We are our past, we are our present, we are our future. Number 2, the control of our own time is a gift to use wisely. The unity that comes from Purim, unity is a key to our nationality, and that full redemption is leaving one thing and going to another. As a nation, as individuals, we're on the journey of life, a game to develop ourselves and our relationships with the people around us and ultimately with God as well. Thank you so much for learning with me. Have a fantabulous weekend.